67 million viewers. 67 million viewers. That's how many people tuned in to the second, I guess, of this cycle, but first debate between the Donald J. Trump and the Kamala Harris. And they had a captive audience, 67 million people about tuned into that. And if you had 67 million people listening to you, what's the key takeaway you would love for them? Welcome back, deep thinkers, audacious leaders. We are here for your weekly dose of unfiltered insights at the intersection of law, leadership, and learning. Y'all see me in here? Do you see me in here? I hope my mic is on. Do you see me in here? I am leveling up because you know what? I'm going to get into this. This is actually what we're going to talk about a lot today is how many of us have concepts of a plan. Yes, that was my one key takeaway from this debate that happened, all whatever many minutes of it. The thing I left with was the power of concepts of a plan. And I'm going to talk about it from two different angles, right? There's definitely a bit of a double standard that many of us know. I know many of you who are listening are women in leadership roles. And so, you know, you can't walk up in nobody's meeting talking about you've got concepts of a plan. No, ma'am. What's the plan? What's all the information about it, right? And like, let's be clear. But also on the other side, the quote unquote billionaire in the room is operating off of concepts of a plan. And if we're honest, last time he ran, he didn't even have a plan, right? There was no platform. So this might be a step up. But I want you to be empowered and freed, knowing that you too can do some really incredible things with just a concept of a plan. So that is what we're going to talk about in part today. I mentioned 67 million. It is incredibly impactful to have the bully pulpit to be able to stand up and captivate an audience. And so I want to empower you to think about that every time you show up in your team meetings, every time you show up in your social spaces, etc. Like you also, as a leader, have a command over an audience. It might not be 67 million, but you absolutely have command over an audience. And I want to encourage you to use your platform intentionally, especially right now. And if you're following me on social, and if you're not, you should, you can reach me at Nkoyo E. Lewis on all the platforms. My platform of Fancy and Favor is LinkedIn right now, because that's where all the leaders are sitting and silently watching my stuff. And not commenting. So comment, like, share. It helps those of us who are out here to know what's resonating, to know what is of value and impact. But essentially, I had shared on there, I had kind of rage posted Wednesday about how I'm now going to be operating from concepts of a plan. And as someone who's a recovering perfectionist, all-star, like Olympic level overthinker, I actually found that to be not just funny and like shocking that you would be literally after all these years saying you're going to repeal and replace this thing, et cetera, you still ain't got no plan for it. And the social media on it was great too. And one of them that stuck out was like, like me in every meeting with the CEO, like they have concepts of a plan. And so I see the side of it of the double standard, which I talked about on my LinkedIn, right? About how often women are required to have full plans, especially when you step into leadership spaces where we are already second guessed as being competent and capable to do the job, and often have to remind people of our credentials, our authority, so on and so forth, because folks will try us. I can't tell you the number of times people have tried me in the job. I got these grays now, but I didn't always look this age. And so I even distinctly remember when I was teaching, I was fresh out of undergrad. So I'm like in my early 20s. But I'm teaching fourth grade. So my students are like 9 and 10. Like, let's be clear. And one of the parents came in the room, was like looking around, and like all the kids, like I'm passing out stuff, etc. And she was like, "Where's the teacher?" And I was like, "Is she really in front of all these children? Like, I am the teacher. What do you mean?" Right? So there are lots of different ways that people always may subtly or not so subtly challenge your authority. I remember having a legal assistant when I was working in a big law firm who basically was like, "She ain't gonna do my work." Actually, I think just about every legal assistant that was assigned to me in a law firm was like, "I'm not doing your work." And thank God for Black women in spaces who would come in and cover the gap, who would let me know what a legal assistant is supposed to be doing, would be like, I will help you sort this out. Paralegals, like the way that in my experience, some of the support staff in law firms, who mostly happened to be Black, let me keep it real, rallied and supported me as a young attorney was incredible, because there were some bold-faced ways that the people assigned to work for me just did not show up, didn't do my work, left it to last, or not at all. I had to be CCing them on stuff from the partners so they could see that, like, don't be playing with me over here. But there are ways that people subtly and not so subtly, directly, bold-faced in your face, will challenge your authority, will undermine you, will do all those things. And that's a really real experience that a lot of women have in leadership roles, particularly in fields where we're not really deemed to belong or is not traditionally female, but also especially for women of color, and Black women in particular. Let me name that and not be obtuse about it. But there's a lot of ways that we get tried. And so there was definitely a part of me that watched Kamala own that stage, walk all the way over to that man and shake his hand, because I know I have definitely been in instances where folks have tried to just not even acknowledge my presence in the space, and the different ways in which she really pushed him, like, no, do you have a plan? And then we got the beauty, the gem, the gold that is concepts of a plan. So I'm going to tell you why I think concepts as a plan is the way that we should all move forward at this very space in time, and why this can be a really empowering and uplifting way for us to move, particularly as women, as overthinkers, as perfectionists, as people who have been socialized to not know or understand or really feel our power. Y'all see me? I got these backgrounds here. Like, I have been leveling up. And again, kind of ties back to this whole concepts of a plan. Because I have, and I imagine that many of you who are listening have ideas, have bold, audacious, incredible ideas. You have visions, you have dreams that are deeply personal, that are possibly incredibly impactful, that tap into skills and a genius that you have, but maybe won't acknowledge or allow yourself to fully develop because it's not practical or responsible or whatever other sort of hogwash that's out there. Side note, let me tell you, and I should really save this for my next That's So Serious, but the guy who had the Fire Festival hosting again, I mean, epic fail, publicly, lots of money lost. I think there were lawsuits. Hosting it again, got folks applying for his $1 million package. So many times we don't try things because we're afraid that we are going to fail, in addition to the fear of being a beginner. And that's also in part why I'm sharing some of the background. I'm letting you see the up leveling. I'm calling it out because I want you to know I started with a concept of a plan for this podcast. Some of you are like, we know, sis, we know. But every single episode gets a little clearer, gets a little bit more structured, gets a little bit more organized, starts to look a little bit better. Listen to me, I love some good branding. So I'm proud of myself. I'm going to speak on it, preach on it. But if I had not been willing to take a concept of a plan and move it to action, y'all would not see this podcast today. If I had not taken a concept of a plan and moved it to action, I would have never launched my law practice and helped countless families figure out how to navigate the education system, help a lot of social impact leaders build businesses, particularly women. I've actually been supporting women from most of my career. But if I hadn't had a concept of a plan and just been like, well, let's move it to action and see what happens and iterate as I go, a lot of the things that you see around me that some of you are like, wow, how did you do that? That's cool. Like, oh, wow, you're brave, etc. You would have never seen it because I would still be somewhere sitting and thinking about it, writing it down in the billions of notebooks that I have. And I'm gonna be honest, I have a whole bunch of content, a whole bunch of ideas and things that have still not seen the light of day because I haven't figured out how to move them to action, or maybe I put them on pause because your girl's been kind of overloaded. And so I want to share the importance of actually moving forward with even just the concept of the plan. And I say that because I know that in this space, that if you're tuning into me, if you're listening to me, if you are in the Leadership Revolt, our newsletter, and catching and consuming that content, that you're likely a very ambitious woman. You're probably highly degreed and educated. You have experience in street cred and credentials, like you have actually done things and seen results. And maybe you haven't always seen or appreciated them, because sometimes we just move from one thing to the next thing to the next thing to the next thing. And the goal in success is always moving. And so we never take the time to really celebrate and, cheer on ourselves about the things that we have accomplished. Many of us have lived sort of in this survival mode where we're just like, I just got to do this thing, and then I got to do this next thing, and like I just have to do it, right? I have to carry the load, I have to figure it out, I have to make it happen, and realizing that, one, everybody doesn't have to live their life that way, and two, not everybody is as successful as you are, but we often don't hear or see or name our successes. So if you are that person, then I am 100% confident, 1,000% sure, 10 toes down, that your concept of a plan is probably far more developed than other people's actual plan. If you've ever been into your job and been like, I don't know who or what told them they could do this doesn't make sense, like we clearly could have done it this, and that, blah, 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 I have no doubt that whatever idea that you have running around through your brain that you've maybe put to paper, you've thought on, mused on, etc., maybe sketched out some things, is far more of a plan than some of people's final draft of what they're submitting and putting out there into the world. And so I want to encourage you right now in this very space to just take a minute and think about that thing. And I know you have it. I'm sure you maybe are feeling it in your body. There's that thing that you've been holding on to, that you've wanted to explore. Maybe you have started looking into it. Maybe you stopped. Maybe you took a few steps and then you kind of like moved on because it seemed impractical or childish or, whatever other thing, or life got a hold of you. Maybe you are like me and you've got these small children who have social lives that are incredible. Maybe you have partners. Maybe you've had loss or other things that have come, and so you sort of set this dream or this vision aside. I want you to pull back to that. I want you to sit in that for a space. Bring it to mind and body. If you got to close your eyes and like think about that thing, I want you to do that. And while you're thinking about that thing, I want you to know that you are 1,000% capable of bringing that thing to life. You know me in Coil, I'm a leadership strategist, a system shifter, possibility broker. I am always going to talk with you about how to take your most audacious idea and turn it into reality. When I was practicing, people would come and say, I have this idea for a business, and it's like this and that, and it feels all over the place. And we would just sequence it, make it make sense, and help them figure out what structure to put around it so they could go do the thing. And I want you to know that there are people around you who can help you go do the thing. There's a great book that I'm going to read. I've heard a lot of the cliff notes about it. I've heard people talk about it in a lot of other podcasts and spaces that I follow. It's called Who, Not How. And the whole premise is, instead of trying to figure out how you do it, figure out who does it, because it may or may not be you. I am a full focus girl. Judge somebody else. I love me my little full focus. I try to, take my little notes and keep notes. But they have a podcast, and they also have resources. And the other day, they dropped this thing about delegation. And I know for a lot of ambitious women who are perfectionists, who are diverse, who are Black, who maybe haven't always had the support of people around them to help them move things forward, that we hold things, we hoard it. We don't delegate. We're like, it would just be easier for me to do it than to have somebody else do it. And then you have a task list that is, what do they say, longer than a CVS receipt, and you're overwhelmed, you can't get through it, right? Or you're spending all of your time, you're hitting these all-nighters, you've got no social life, you have foregone dating or any of these different things because you're just trying to survive your task list. One, there are lots of tools out there. I really love the Eisenhower framework for like figuring out how to prioritize your task list, and also operating in the space of to not do. I used to have a to not do list, and I would like put things on there that like, girl, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. We're not doing that. But anyway, full focus. They have a download for a delegation sort of cheat sheet. And it kind of talks to you about the different ways that you can delegate, right? From, this is just like a task, a rote task, doesn't really need to be me, could possibly be tech. I could talk about that in another space. Technology can do a lot. And if y'all are not on this AI thing and kind of understand how it will work and impact your life, you should get on it, but that's a separate podcast. All the way down to like, if you're going to delegate like decision making and strategy. I think it's a great tool For you personally, it's a great tool if you're running a business or you're, over a department, you're managing people. It really helps you kind of think about what type of delegation am I doing and like to who, and that who, not how, really supports that sort of thinking of like everything doesn't have to be done by you. Like you need to figure out who, probably need to hire the right who. There's a great resource for that. I really like one book. It is called Who, the A+ method for hiring or something like that. I will put all these in the notes, all these resources that I'm talking about so that you can go level up yourself as a leader. That's what we're about in this space, period. But I want you again to go back to that thing, that idea, that vision, that dream that you've been sitting on for years, months, decades, whatever it is. I know for me, I have been saying I wanted to write a book. I have been wanting to be an author since I was super small. I used to, in the summers, stay up late and write stories. They were really ridiculous novels about my sort of like teenage angst of like wanting to date. And so they were always usually about some girl who was like trying to date somebody who then found her somebody and whatnot. So I used to write my own like little romance novels, my teen romance novels. Never published any of them, right? Like my mom would be like, what in the world? Like, why do we have all of this stuff? And you just like won't put it anywhere. But I've always wanted to write a book. I think at this point, with all the ideas that I have, I've got at least 5 books that like should have maybe made it to the light of day. And I've been sitting on it because I'm like, I have a concept of a plan, but I don't have this and I don't have that. And like, oh, I need to have this. And I keep thinking that I have to have this like big, full thing that's robust and like well-researched and all this type of stuff before I can get started, before I can move forward, before I can name that. And then I happened to meet a really incredible person in one of my coaching programs who helps people write books. And we started having conversations and she started talking to me about easy ways, easy lifts that I could do to like start writing these books. And I was like, wow, right? This concept of a plan is something I've been sitting on. And she was like, it's already more developed than a lot of people who come to her for some of these things. I have a leadership coach. I practice what I preach. I absolutely think that if top athletes have coaches to help them get their mind and body right, like there's no reason why we nerd leaders can't do that as well. So I definitely have a leadership coach. She and I were talking and I was like, oh, I'm doing all these stuff. These are things I'm interested in. And then she was like, great, like, what do you have? And I showed her and she was like, this isn't like a brainstorm. Like this is actually a beginning. And so I imagine that I'm not alone. We often tend to attract people who are like us or at a certain part or similar to us in a certain part in our journey, that many of you who are listening also have things that are pretty well developed enough to take action. And I want to encourage you to take action. Okay, being a beginner and figuring out what it looks like, how you improve it, whether you scrap it, because there's freedom in that too. There were things that I wanted to do. Quick story. When I started this podcast, it was actually after I lost my second election. And I was bitter. I might still be bitter, but I was absolutely bitter in that place. You got to like be a good winner, right? We don't want to be a sore loser. And so the original idea for the podcast was the Sore Losers podcast. And I was actually going to talk about loss and how that impacts the way that we lead. It was going to be SOAR with the SOAR, because your girl loves a play on words. And I was like, so excited. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about loss. Like, we're just going to profile all these things. And then I did a trademark search because your girl's a lawyer too. And I like to own the things that I create, and realized that somebody had already like owned the trademark in that space. And so I was like, well, I don't know. And it took me a little bit longer to start the podcast because I couldn't find another name. And then I decided I was using the name as a reason to not move forward. And so that's how we kind of came here with Inkoyo Unscripted. I'm like, I'm just going to show up. It is actually a call to myself to not be perfect and fully aligned in everything that I'm doing, and just allow myself to grow in the process, to adopt that beginner's mindset. And if you are in the Leadership Revolt, if you get our weekly newsletter that comes out every Sunday, you know that last week I talked about the beginner's mindset. If you're following me on social, I had a post about it also, about how we have to be willing to be curious and ask questions and continue to try versus like shutting down and quitting because things don't work out the way that they need to. And so, the original plan isn't what is taking place today. And as I've been working and going through this and really trying to think about what it is that I'm doing and how I streamline all of my interests, I've also been becoming clearer and clearer about who I serve, who I want to be talking to, what I want to be talking to people about, why, what's the importance of it. And that concept of a plan is turning into tangible things that will be recorded in history. One day my children and other people will find this podcast and they will hear this recounting of things that were going on, issues that were happening, what was going on in the leadership space, in the futurism space, from a Black woman, which I'm really excited about because there actually aren't a lot of us in this space. So if you know some things about this, I want you to get out there and start putting your knowledge out there in a tangible medium so that people can learn from you, can grow from you. But yes, so your concept of a plan is likely more than just a concept. You probably have enough to get started, and I want to help you take the first step. And honestly, it really is taking the step, being willing to be a beginner, to see what happens, collect the feedback from the market. You're always going to over critique all of your stuff. You're going to assume that it is for you or someone who's exactly like you, and it's not. When you are leading others, whether it's as a business leader in a for-profit, a social impact leader in a nonprofit benefit corporation, mother in your home, teacher, director, manager, you're there for a reason, because we're assuming that you're a little bit ahead of the folks that you're hiring, right? You've got a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of skill that's more advanced than the people that you're working with. And so if you're of what something needs to be is you're already preventing the people who are following you from picking up the breadcrumbs, right? They say success leaves clues. And so if you're not willing to share what you know, you're not leaving clues. And so I want to encourage you to take that concept of a plan and turn it into some action. Kind of like, well, I won't say it that way. I'm 1,000% certain that you can take action. It could be terrible. It could be bad, but it will get better because most of you are people who are going to keep trying to improve yourself. You're investing in knowledge in the first place. And so I have no doubts that you can start something, improve it. And that is what you will see. If you continue to follow this journey of Nkoyo Unscripted, you will see that I have started with something and I'm continuing to improve it. And when you get to episode 50, Convo 50, and look back at Convo 1 and be like, I can't believe this is the same person. But that's the beauty of taking a step and then taking the next step and then taking the next step and allowing yourself to grow. All right. That is my soapbox. You too can take your concept of a plan and lead something amazing. And I want to empower and equip you to do that. If you are listening in here and you're like, wow, how do I take the next step? I have some information for how you can get in touch with me. We are releasing towards the end of this quarter, this year, I guess. Boy, we're already there. It's like September. It's like mid-September as well. Our collective. And this is a brave space to offer you the strategy and support to turn your audacious ideas into actual impact. It is especially designed for those of you who are leading change, which we know can be a very lonely and frustrating process. So this is home. This is a haven for you to get poured into, to get resources and tools to move you forward, to figure out how you navigate some of the challenges that come with disruption and change in the first place, and do that without having to feel alone, without having to Google everything for an answer. You're going to get a curated space. And so if you're interested in that, you can absolutely find more information. I'm going to put the link to the collective in the chat, in the notes. It is free. We're opening it. We're building it. Again, this is me. I have wanted to open and create a community, a collective for a really long time. I will say for me, losing publicly twice has really opened me up to just try some things, because it can't be worse than that, in my opinion. And, the former president, Mr. Billionaire in the room, says that he operates off a concept of a plan too. So let's all take our concepts and bring them to life. And the collective is one of them that I'm actually really excited to release into the world. I love connecting with others and connecting people with resources and tools and the people that can move them forward. And so if you're interested, the link will be in the notes. You can take a look at it. We are opening the community, making it available at a very, 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 very discounted price to start, because we want to build the community, test the model, see what works, what doesn't work, and really continue to iterate. You see me modeling? I tell you, I practice what I preach. So if you're like, I want more, I will have that information there. You can always reach out to me also. But let's go ahead and turn to my favorite part of the podcast. And I'll be honest, this actually was birthed after my first loss, which will come back to the anniversary of that in November. So November 2023, I was on the ballot for Atlanta Public Schools board at large, seat 9. So I ran a citywide race, first time ever, had no idea what I was doing, had some of the dopest women support me in that race, ride with me day in, day out, get my graphics right, show up with me to the events, help me get my mind right. We had also a lot of really other great, incredible people who supported us in that race, in addition to 12,000, like an incredible number of people who showed up and actually checked my very foreign name on the ballot. But we lost. It was devastating. Probably one of the hardest losses of my adult life professionally. And so we used to talk about how people were so unserious. Like, this is so unserious. That is so unserious. Atlanta is so unserious. Like, that was our thing. And so this was actually birthed from that. We had talked about it like, oh, you started a podcast. You didn't have that, so unserious. And so this is why I get really excited, because I took an idea, a concept, and am making it a real thing. So let's, without further ado, get into it. Rachel Reagan Gunn. I don't know if you guys have, I know, here it's going to run again because I'm still trying to learn how to use this. I don't know if you all know about Rachel Gunn. This is the most unserious thing. It's so unserious. But let me just tell you quickly. So Rachel Gunn performed at the Olympics in breakdancing. They will not be bringing breakdancing back again, and for very good reason. But she performed in the Olympics for breakdancing. She went, I think, at least 3 rounds. I don't remember exactly how many rounds in the Olympics with these breakdancing moves that I have never seen before in my life, including what it looks like a kangaroo. She's from Australia. I appreciate the nod to her country. If you have not seen it, I have a link to where you can see the video for one of the rounds. It is something, right? But she took her concept of a plan. She took it to action. She competed. She made it to the Olympics. She scored exactly 0 points. How many? 0 points in all rounds. Just straight zeros at the Olympics, right? Like, no, we don't know what you're doing, sis. And is currently ranked the #1 breaker in the world for women. It's insane. It's insane. It is not serious. This is so unserious. It's so unserious. But yeah, she got out there. She had competed at something where she won. So on a technicality, she had won something somewhere else, despite getting all zeros, utter bomb at the Olympics. And she's the ranked #1 world breaker for women. And I appreciate Rachel Gunn. She's been getting a lot of hate, and I wish that we could really show up differently, even when we're kind of appalled or whatever. But she's getting a lot of hate, which we don't need to operate that way. I think she had issued an apology for the breakdancing world and whatnot, because she's the #1, and if you watch the video, she should not be #1. But she put it out there. She did it. She was taking these classes. Very fun fact about Rachel Gunn: she is an academic. She's a professor at a university in Australia. I think she might be a doctor, so let me put some respect on her name, Dr. Gunn. She wrote a paper on breakdancing. I think that maybe her doctorate was maybe about that. I might get those facts wrong, but she had an interest in this. She studied it. She wrote about it. She got into it. She went to the Olympics for it. My girl took action, right? Concepts of a plan into action. And now she's #1, ranked #1 in breakdancing. So for all of you all who are sitting out here on some things where you should probably really be the #1, somebody else is taking action and taking your title. And I hope that will empower you to not only feel like that's crazy and unserious, but to take action, turn those ideas into actual impact. Somebody's waiting. Somebody's waiting for you. We're waiting. Someone's waiting. So please do not keep us waiting for much longer. All right, that's all I have got for today. I want to remind you to get out there, subscribe to the channel. We are on YouTube. We're video first, so YouTube, Spotify. You can also get us on Apple Podcasts. Absolutely, subscribe, comment, give me some comments, feedback. I would love to know how you are experiencing and receiving this. That is in the top, I can't even point, the top corner there. That is what the cover art looks like right now. Who knows later what it would look like, but definitely like, subscribe. Let me know if you had any ahas, and let's make sure, thank you for joining. I hope that you'll join me next week as we explore more insights at the intersection of law, leadership, and learning. Until then, audacious leaders, deep thinkers, go lead audaciously.